I'd now like to welcome Stephen White back on stage, who is now going to bring our panelists for the last session of the day onto the stage. I think you're going to find this an extremely useful and provocative closing session. Stephen, very warm welcome back onto the stage. Thank you so much.
Yeah, thank you, Paul. I'm sure people who enjoyed Gerhan's presentation, they have plenty of questions. What we're going to do, because we're running out of time, or we've run out of time really, but we're going to try and stretch it as much as we can before they throw us out, is he's going to take questions as part of our next session, because we're looking forward is the future of fleet and transportation in the region sessions. So while my friends bring some furniture onto the stage, can I call back Gerhan to join us again? And also Brent Melvin, who's very patiently been waiting. Thank you, Brent. Please, a round of applause as our panelists come on board. Richard Hall, for asked you to come and join us again, and Shivanda, who gives such a good overview of Star as well. Please come and join us. A round of applause, everybody. It's the final session. Welcome, everyone and guests, to this last session. I just quite a few things to pick up on there. I mean, obviously, one of the interesting things came out was the growth of potential for e-mobility. But I think in this session, this is a very forward-facing session. A little bit different because of the lack of time. If you have any questions, do stick a hand up, and we'll also get you to join in our conversation. So please do. Oh, we already have a hand. As we're doing that, as we're getting the microphone over, I don't know if you guys have some thoughts at the moment in terms of what we've heard so far. I mean, specifically with the concept of looking forwards. I mean, we haven't really touched on, if you don't mind, artificial intelligence very much at all. And that's something, obviously, that you're a specialist in, Brent. So I wouldn't mind us just having a brief conversation. We'll come to you in a second. And if you could make sure that when someone puts a hand up, they get a microphone, that would be great. So just as you're the new boy on the panel now, if you just give an explanation about what you do and exactly what your organization does as well.
Very good. Thanks very much, and good afternoon, everybody. Firstly, allow me to thank the speakers. It's been an incredible day. I love the fact that there's been so much focus on one of the key components of any transport organization, and that's the driver. And very much an overlooked part of what we do. You know, we're very focused around fleet operations, total cost of ownership. And one of the key things we forget is the person behind the wheel. So today's been an incredible day as far as that goes. So let me start off just by saying what we do is focus specifically on the driver. And our company comes from the perspective of having simulators. So again, this is not a new environment having simulators, but we go one step further and we bring the artificial intelligence element into our simulators. So what that means is we want to get to the heart of how somebody thinks. So looking at the behavioral components of a driver. So it's not the fact that he has a driver license. Some government somewhere has already determined that this person can drive. What we're looking at is what drives his behavior particularly, and then that in turn is how does it translate to on-road performance? Because obviously we all are very much aware of these different cultures all coming to a single location. We drive with our own skills and abilities from our home countries, with our own ideas about what's right and wrong. And our individual behavior impacts people around us on the road. So what we want to do from the AI metaverse company side is look at how do we attend to these common behavioral issues that impact other road users. So, you know, if I look at TriStar and what great work they do, they're doing very traditional and very effective driver training. And they look at the behavioral side, but it's from a psychology perspective, sitting in front of a driver one-to-one, talking to the driver and training and teaching. What we're doing is we're using the simulator as a human interface to give a driver a lot of really high-impact interventions in a simulated environment using biometric devices that driver wears to allow us to pick up things like his stress factors or his visual impairments and such, or his focus on road. And then utilizing that, we come up with about 19 data points of areas of strength or weakness, and then we use this for further training and identification of potential for drivers. Because again, what we've identified is the lack of drivers. So there was talk about recruitment and how do you bring people into the framework of employment without the costs of visas and transport and the accommodations, etc. So what we do is we go through this behavioral side of it before you even go to the point of offering somebody an employment contract. So now you're starting to see whether this person fits a particular criteria, whether he's best suited perhaps to passenger transportation, goods transportation, and of course everyone is a unique type of driver. So, this is where we're coming from.
It's an interesting one because obviously when we think about artificial intelligence applications inside transportation, I think the conversation is really somewhere down the road. It's talking about autonomous vehicles, talking about the use of machine learning, all those sorts of things to enable vehicle autonomy. But what you're talking about is actually something quite practical. Well, it sounds, actually, while it's quite sophisticated, actually it's a very practical thing. But is this something that you could, like any fleet could do? Is there a barrier to entry for this? Because ultimately it does sound quite sophisticated.
So there's no barrier to entry. If you have a driver's license and if you have a fleet of drivers that are operating in your environment and you want to assess their capabilities, we're a mechanism to do that. So whether it's TriStar, with their sophisticated training, wanting to get a further behavioral in-depth view on their drivers, or whether it's somebody new to the driving environment that's wanting to get that kind of experience, it's really just looking at the behavioral components of drivers. And then you talk about the simplicity. It seems simple in its outset, but actually there's a huge amount of algorithms that take all of this data and start to develop the psychology behind it. Now, what's quite interesting about the data we gather is also leads itself into autonomous vehicles and mobility. Now, let me explain very briefly, and then I'm sorry, I'm stealing some thunder from the panel. But, very briefly, we gather so much data about individual behavior on the road. What autonomous vehicle developers do is they gather a lot of data about vehicles on the road. And the driver may be driving the vehicle, but you don't know how the driver's thinking. You only know what the vehicle's doing. Is it harsh accelerating, braking, cornering, etc.? And the accelerometers tell you that. They tell you a lot of data about what's going on.
That is useful information. That is surely.
It's incredible information. It's incredibly important information.
Yeah.
But if you have 2% of your vehicles on road are autonomous vehicles and the other 98% are humans, your autonomous vehicle has to anticipate other humans. Where does that data come from?
Well, this is the problem with autonomous vehicles. This is where the stumbling block is, isn't it?
Very much.
Actually, it's the interaction between the human, is the identifying them sometimes.
Exactly.
But actually, it's that problem, isn't it?
So we're providing human data,
human
behavioral data to autonomous vehicle developers. So
yeah, it's interesting. I mean, so we don't have a lot of time, so I'm afraid we will have to skip through different subjects. So I was going to pass you over to Shivanda. Obviously, you had a nice kind of like big up there about TriStar again, but thinking more widely, what other sort of major trends do you think there are? I mean, obviously, we're talking about practical applications there for artificial intelligence. I mean,
sure. Yeah. Thank you. Probably, I would rather say what I need. Yeah. So probably,
is it a long list? Yeah, a lot of time.
So one is yes, AI. I think. They should work in terms of to plan remedial training for drivers. So like Thomas was presenting earlier today, most of them, all the mistakes are human related. So human mistakes are maybe 90% or more. That causes real accidents. So if AI can understand this driver is a potential driver who can make this mistake and he will involve in an accident in a future day. If he can tell me in advance, I will work on him.
So predictive. Yeah. So not just predictive maintenance, predictive behavior.
Exactly.
We'll call that PB, shall we? Rich.
And second one, sorry.
One more.
For vehicle,
you need to get a genie, don't you?
For the vehicle manufacturers, today I think we are talking about 2.53 kilometers per liter fuel average. I think IC engines going to last for at least next 15, 20 years. Can we make 10 kilometers per liter? Thank you.
Physics again, isn't it? It always comes down to physics. Richard.
Oh, I think in terms of the next development, probably emissions. So in this region,
Yeah.
we've talked about that a lot today, and in the previous presentation it was mentioned 37% aren't
Yeah.
aware about the
Crazy.
Euro standards. So,
Yeah.
and there's a step.
How is that possible? I saw that figure. I thought that's just crazy. I thought 37% not aware. I mean, that's just.
Exactly, and I think there's a step to make
Yeah.
in between. So everybody's talking about we're going to go to electric power, but the reality is here, let's say we're at Euro 4.
Yeah, if we're not making the step into Euro 4 or Euro 5,
and
Euro 6.
in Saudi, maybe we'll go for Euro 5, as I mentioned earlier today, but you'd be surprised if you talk now about Euro 6D, for example, which is where we are. Maybe Euro 7 will still come. But the emission standards at Euro 6D with the right diesel are already so low.
Yeah, I mean,
and most people, they're not aware about that. Probably in this region, we first need to go there, and then
you would
we're
think
going to come to
that's how it's worked elsewhere. But I mean sometimes that's the ignorance comes from a sort of, it's kind of advantageous. I mean, we've seen that in the previous part where people have been slow to adopt the new emissions norms because it works in their financial interest, which is, but yeah, I mean, obviously, as things change. I mean, Gerhan, you obviously gave us such a terrific presentation there. We have somebody with a burning question for you too. But I just, before we get to that, I just want to sort of ask you just sort of, what do you say? I mean, you gave a lovely overview there. I mean, I don't know, out of those things that you said, which would you say the major kind of future trends or major things we should be looking out for, major concerns? Or?
In terms of the trends, so during and right after the pandemic, so it was mainly for the industries to have this omni-channel marketing so that they reach out to the consumers during this shift in the overall supply and value chain, which has happened actually. But I think what couldn't follow that, which was a disruptive change in the expectations of the consumers, is the omni-channel distribution network. Because there are like multiple options for fulfillment, right? Shipping from the factory, warehouse, retail store, dark store, pop-up nodes. But the brands and the big players in the industry couldn't really catch up with the trends in terms of building the omni-channel distribution, because this requires investment, people, and time. I think the trend will still be on building the omni-channel distribution along with the right digitalization tools. Because to me, the things around like fleet management, telematics, these are still great, but I think these are getting a bit old in terms of technology. Now it's more about connected mobility with like AI and also autonomous ways of driving, so that we take out the element of human error from the system and also optimize the resources so that the connected and the intelligent mobility brings in the highest efficiency for the industry.
I mean, that's the great thing about these technological breakthroughs that we're having. Right, I really must let this gentleman ask his question. I do apologize.
No, that's fine. And I don't intend to trouble the
Sorry,
Gurhan. So
need the
no
microphone
difficult questions, but an answer that I've been seeking for a while and I've not got it, and I think you've got very deep insight into the market research, so maybe you can share. I've been wondering, there's been a...
We're just going to change
I
the microphone.
cannot hear you.
There's been a fairly steep recession in the West, in North America and Europe in terms of economy. Do you think that we will benefit from that in terms of supply and demand, especially in terms of supply? That's one question. The other question is some of the statistics that you showed in terms of growth in the region and UAE. Do you think this is a pipeline that was filled up and still sort of catering to the back orders, or do you think this is a trend going forward?
Thank you. Let me take the second one first, if you may. No, this was not the backlog of the orders, or this was mainly due to the huge increase in the demand throughout last year, especially starting from 2021 second half and continued in entire 2022. And the manufacturers really enjoyed this high demand and pushed really a lot in terms of stretching their capacities and production capabilities. But this ended up with some higher stocks in terms of the goods that are not like fast-moving consumer goods, but more tech and durable goods. So we will see the impact of this accumulation of stocks and inventories throughout this year to be a bit of a burden in some industries and some big players. So we would expect some disruptions in terms of their operations and meeting the demand, because there will be a pricing lag and discontinuity in terms of what they have in their cost of goods sold versus the actual costs, which are declining for some raw materials. The first question on the macroeconomics, I think I look at the bright side. I think the inflations already have this impact on the consumer sentiment, and it's already considerably down compared to last year. But especially in our region, people are resilient. So when we ask about the 5 years projection about their well-being and availability to consume and purchasing powers, they are very positive. And we are in a really resilient region, so I think this will not have...
There's also as well, I think, I mean, you'll correct me on this, but I remember sort of like where we had the global economic recession going back sort of, well, I can't believe that's nearly 15 years ago since that started. But at the time, obviously, the different situation now is that we're looking at this particular market, high oil prices, versus actually what were like quite very low oil prices there. So actually, like there is a sort of protective bubble, if you like, in terms of this particular corner of this particular market, and I think that will be really interesting to see how that plays out a bit. So because obviously, I mean, look at the US market. Obviously, we look at the bank the situation. Yeah. There are some sort of little tremors going on in the global economically. So it'd be very interesting to see how we get affected, because we're not always immune. While we're sort of running out of time.
I'm not sure if I actually got my message clearly. So what I was saying is that we still have some supply situation or challenges in this region.
Yeah.
What I was saying is that with the drop in the consumption in the Western world, which is North America, Europe, the production may benefit our region because we have been running lean. But with a drop of demand in the West, is the supply situation likely to improve here because we get production capacity now since there's a drop in the demand in the West?
Okay, the short answer to that question would be yes, because this region is also strong in terms of re-exports, especially when it comes to automotive aftermarket. Let's say in truck tires, we see re-export of products more than what is consumed internally, in-house in UAE or Saudi. So I think the traders and the overall business ecosystem will keep finding their way out in terms of utilizing these additional stocks and the supply.
Okay. Sorry, Richard, you want to say?
Yeah, just one comment on that, because the lack of supply in the market in the region was not only caused by demand in other areas. So if that drops, yes and no, because some of the delays or the problems are caused more by suppliers to the brands, which were affected during either COVID or now by the situation in Ukraine. That's not for all brands, but a dropping demand in Europe or in another place doesn't necessarily mean it will get better. Yeah, they have to solve their supplier and their logistical problems.
Exactly, and there are, I mean, commercial vehicles are a really good example of, well, while production might be by demand might fall in one market, you're still talking about production that's set up for a particular form of like engines, or whatever. So actually, the capacity might not necessarily be there. We are running out of time, so if anybody has any questions, please stick your hands up now. But I think we'll probably, if we're coming to wrap up this session, I think the question I wanted to really ask was just sort of looking forwards. We've got the year of sustainability this year. There are lots of technological solutions that can make a contribution to that. I just want to sort of ask the panel about what sort of technological solutions you feel are appropriate for us to be looking at. I mean, we talked about electric vehicles and things like that, because I just feel that, you know, AI is an interesting one. It's not hardware, but it's actually one that sort of can make lots of efficiencies there. So throwing out to the panel, just what do you think we can do from a technological point of view in terms of actually making a contribution to the year of sustainability?
So I think it's been mentioned a couple of times today, and I'll mention it again, optimization.
Optimization.
And that in a single word encompasses so many different areas of opportunity. So whether we're talking about software to optimize routes, route management, cost of operations, space utilization, this is a time to use the assets with the asset. And a digital environment enables that to a large extent. So, you know, we can start to look at things from very, very many different angles, just purely by utilizing a digital overlay. And I'll use my solution as part of this example, where a driver drives costs. And to the point of being efficient, actually investing in drivers gives you a better bottom line return. I know that sounds counterintuitive. However,
This is the conversation we were having earlier. If you think about it, the guy was saying, if you're going to invest all this money into your drive, aren't you going to be more expensive?
Just think about the short list. Fuel consumption goes down, maintenance goes down, accidents go down, means utilization of asset availability, means a cost reductions in terms of uptime on vehicles. So there's so many impact items, and again, this is part of optimization.
So we can be a leaner, greener sort of industry, actually, if we use some of these technological solutions that are out there. Shivanda, anything you want to add to that?
So same thing for me is the fuel efficient, super efficient vehicle. That's one. That's for me. So that will reduce us because
so anything that makes you fuel efficient is good.
Yeah, so that's around 20 to 50% my cost is because of fuel. So if that comes down, it's really amazing.
Wow. Richard.
I would say emissions and safety standards. It's something I'm aligned with Thomas on that. So things are there, but it really needs to be toughened up, implemented, and policed.
Gohan, you got anything to add to that?
I fully agree with that. So it's all about efficiency. The products are there, like net carbon zero lubricants or track tires made from sustainable raw materials, AI tools for connected mobility. It just requires the government bodies, key industry players to really invest in getting this up and running in the fleet's ecosystem.
Wonderful. Any questions from
really just one very quick last point, which relates to the supply and demand issue that you quite wisely mentioned. Just yesterday, I was chairing a panel with 9 CEOs of construction, consulting, and architecture practices, and all of them are engaged in some way or another on the Saudi Giga projects. And one of them was saying that, hot from the press, as it was, news that one of the biggest project managers in the world, who shall remain nameless, has a major project with one of the Saudi Giga projects. And what has happened is that they were contracted to supply modular housing and 3D printed housing to this Saudi Giga project. And they have now diverted their supply to charitable work to the earthquake famine survivors in southern Turkey, which means they couldn't meet their obligations to the project manager on the Saudi Giga projects. What's happened already, this has only happened 11 days ago, is that the Saudi Giga project managers are now suing the project manager for breach of contract. So not only is supply and demand a fragile and sensitive issue, but when it goes wrong, the challenges happen Straight away.
Oh, absolutely, 100%, 100%. And there's also
Yeah.
just even getting the business in the first place is a problem
Absolutely.
if you're looking for a contract.
Absolutely.
I'm going to leave it there, but thank you very much.
Yeah.
And thank you to the panel. I mean, it's a little tease. We do have the Fleet and Mobility Summit coming up in May, which goes much more into this sort of thing, much deeper into this. But I just want to thank our panel. Thank you very much. Thank you, gentlemen.